Hello, welcome back to Books, a monthly series where I talk about some of the books I've read in the last few weeks. How are you? How's everything going? I hope you're well. I hope you've read lots of books or had time to read at least one. How are you enjoying the change of the season? It's a weird one, isn't it? I really love this time of year. Maybe it's because it's when I was born or because I work in academia, but it always feels like a new year to me. The September time, changing of the colours, everyone arriving back on campus, everything starting up again after a long summer break. That for me, that feels like a new year. Even though the nights are getting longer and everything is going into hibernation, for me it feels like a freshness is in the air that's just not present in the summer. A few books for you this month, mostly from my ever-present library to be read pile. There's also some things that have arrived in the post, and yeah, let's get started. Okay, first thing, Scabby Queen. This is a Scottish novel published from Fourth Estate. It came out last year. It follows the story of Cleo Campbell, a singer and political activist who, when we find her at the start of the novel, she has died of suicide. And we never actually hear from Cleo. We only ever hear from everyone else in her life, starting with her best friend who finds her on the day after she has killed herself, all the way to past boyfriends, family members, people that she's met along the road. I didn't really get on with this book very well. I finished it, I read all of it. It's 415 pages long. It felt like a slog for me. Some of that is down to personal taste. The writing just wasn't really my cup of tea, it wasn't really my style. Phrases such as, he felt the Wi-Fi clogging up with data, really draw me out of the story because it just makes me think, I've never felt the Wi-Fi clogging up full of data when I've downloaded anything. So those kind of things really pull me out of the moment and make me feel a bit icky. Interesting concept of having this central character who is present only in other people's writing and the rest of the time they're just being described by other people. It's a really, really interesting concept. We jump backwards and forwards in time throughout the novel as we hear all the different voices of the people who knew her throughout her life. The characters were mostly unlikable, which can be really interesting, and I praise the book for not just having loads of really one-dimensional characters. I think they're complex characters to a degree. I would say that there's so many voices in this book, it's hard to get invested in any one voice, and the character around which the whole novel is presented just seems, I'm not that invested in her. I would rather hear more about a lot of these other characters, I think, and maybe that's the point of the book, is that by having these voices it's more about these other characters than it is about this central character, but I didn't find that. And they all have their own relationship with Cleo, the central character. Unfortunately, nearly every version of the story is kind of this, oh, I found her weirdly attractive, or I found her weirdly ethereal, and it kind of reminded me of the manic pixie dream girl problem of a lot of early thousands movies, where this central female character, even though she is supposed to be complex and interesting and multi-dimensional, just ends up being rendered as attractive, and that's the main thing. All the men think that they're the love of her life. There's women in the book who fantasize about her or have their first or only lesbian experience with her, which is meant to be some kind of demarcation of how attractive she is, I guess. I just didn't really get on with any of that. A lot of it is about politics, and there's a lot of it is based around the early thousands or the 90s. So there's mentions of the anti-poll tax protests, there's mentions of anti-Iraq war protesting around the time of Blair. Later in the book there's mentions of Brexit and Scottish independence. And for me, maybe the novel just needs to age a little bit. It's a Scottish voice on politics, which I don't think we see in fiction as much as we could in the UK, so that's positive. I think my main issue is that the tone of the writing just wasn't for me, and that's a very subjective thing. It doesn't mean that the book is good or bad, it just means that for me it wasn't to my taste. Let's talk about a book I really did like from the same publishing house, Fourth Estate, who are usually amazing. Who They Was. This is an amazing novel. The voice of this novel, one person who reviewed this novel described it as arriving on the scene like the sound of gunfire. It's true. This is a story about London. It's a story about someone who is trying to find a sense of belonging in a community. And it's a barely fictionalized account of the author's life in South Kilburn. They're involved in gangs, in organised crime, and it documents his life as it is balanced between his parents' home, his home in South Kilburn, his life in gangs, his time in prison, and also alongside all of that, he's completing a degree in literature at Queen Mary University in the East End. So there's a lot of different things, a lot of different parts of this life of this character that we see. And throughout all of it, there is this deeply philosophical approach to some of the hardest questions about morality. The writing itself is so gripping, and it really has that local dialect style writing that you get in something like Trainspotting, or Anthony Burgess' A Clockwork Orange comes to mind, because a lot of the words will be so unfamiliar to a lot of readers and they'll be so particular to this area of London. The book's funny, it's moving, it's shocking, it's appalling. There are moments that are really visceral. The novel opens with quite a graphic description of the process of a doorstep mugging that he's completing with a friend as part of like an organised crime group that he's in. Morality is explored in a really nuanced way in this novel. It's really fascinating and I just can't recommend it enough. There are some really tender, touching moments as well with his family, and just generally that his internal thoughts are really, really beautiful and moving. Yeah, this book is so good. This is possibly the best book I've read all year. It's so good. I loved it. I loved it. Okay, next. I have just finished Juliet Jaques' Trans, a memoir. I meant to read this when it came out several years ago. Saw it in the library, had to pick it up. Juliet Jaques is an amazing writer. She had a blog about her transition in The Guardian, and that's where I kind of remember first encountering her work. And there's some excerpts from The Guardian in here as well. This is a memoir that covers every part of Juliet's life as a trans person, and it really pushes the reader to acknowledge the absurdities of gender and also the difficulty of finding yourself needing to make changes in your life to be who you are, basically. At the heart of this novel is someone who is finding a sense of belonging and community in their day-to-day life by making changes that are unfortunately radical. They shouldn't be, but they are. One of the things I really like about Juliet's memoir is how she situates her writing and thought on culture in and amongst all the other writing, both on transgender issues and transgender journeys, but also on general culture. So football, TV shows, movies, songs are all in there, all read through the lens of, you know, how do I, as a trans person, fit into this history of culture that we have? And that's one of the things I deeply appreciate about Juliet's work, is how she situates it within this pastiche of different trans texts. For me, this was really powerful. Some of you may know that I'm on a gender journey, and I really loved reading this. It made me cry many times just with how beautifully and simply put some things were about the essential experience of questioning your gender and questioning how the identity you assume is portrayed in the world. One of the most simple and moving lines in Juliet's memoir is, "I can't explain why I'm trans any more than I can explain why I'm left-handed." I think that kind of sums up the memoir's message in a way. This isn't so much about the why, this is just Juliet's single journey. And I think that's an important thing to remember, is trans people, and often people who are oppressed in any way are often forced to write about their identity and their place in the world, and then they're forced to write individually about themselves but also represent an entire community. And that is one of the issues that Juliet talks about really well as well, is about becoming a public professional transgender person, she describes it as, and what the ramifications are of that and how difficult it is to break free from talking just about that, and also how to represent a community that's completely diverse and has so many different experiences. So it is important to remember that this is just one person's life. And it's a wonderful memoir, and it's beautifully put together. The pacing of the memoir is great. You spend about half of the memoir up to the point at which Juliet properly comes out to all her family and friends. You spend the first half in that tumultuous period where we're bouncing back and forth between different parts of the UK and different career changes and different life changes, trying to figure out where Juliet wants to be in her life. And then in the second half we kind of get a lot of the journey in terms of outward. So I guess it would be half internal, half external in the way it's presented. But I think it's clear that even though the memoir begins with surgery, which is what a lot of people see as the end goal, that is not the end. It's a very long process that starts from the moment of your inception, I guess. It's an emotional journey as much as it is physical, and that is very clear in this text. I love how internal it is, and I love how much Juliet is always Juliet. She's always herself throughout the whole memoir, and there's often a temptation, and this is discussed at one point, there's like a duality of the before and after, but you don't get this here. It's all together in one, you know, tangle of threads that get untangled as we go along. But I just loved it, and the writing is perfect for me. But yeah, and also loved what Juliet was saying about Morrissey, because I really loved Morrissey as a teenager as well. So there's some stuff in there about Vicar in a Tutu and those songs where gender is played with so freely by Morrissey, and this was in the days before he revealed that he had terrible opinions, as he has done recently. And Tony Coke has a great art piece about that betrayal, the cultural betrayal of someone like Morrissey for those of us who have looked up to those lyrics. So it really took me back to that, seeing that piece and crying in public at the CCA when I saw that art piece. So yeah, I loved it. I loved this book. I wish I'd read it sooner. I've tried to preserve this in its gorgeous wrapping to show you. Naomi Morris's Hyperlove has come out. I'm just going to get it out of its wrapping. Stunning. Naomi Morris's second after Earth Sign, which was brilliant. And now she's back with this amazing lyric essay, Hyperlove. It's beautiful. And Makina Books has done such a great job with the design and the way it's printed. It's just stunning. This is a poetic exploration of desire, and there's mystics, there's pop culture, there's all sorts of references in here. There's Instagram, there's Angel Olsen, and it's all wrapped together in this big think about writing itself and love, and it's so many things. I love it so much. It's so beautiful. This is from Intermission. At the party, I am raw like a deer, just born in a web of sticky amniotics. I feel my shadow imprint on an unknown house, bleached out. Like tarmac in a heat wave, I am rippling with envy. Manic pixie dream girls fucked up a generation. I always wanted to be the person that was wanted the most, though couldn't want back in the same way because they were in some way unknowable. They would never open up and yet somehow exist as gorgeously vulnerable. Like, fuck, I wish I had an exact and definable trauma. I wish I had learned how to avoid blowing my own guts out on the pavement. So good. And there's gorgeous Naomi in the back. Please go read this. I've got some books here from Peninsula Press. Thank you, Will. Peninsula Press for these. They look great, can't wait to get into them. One is Replace Me, by Amber Hussain, which is a similar type of love. It's also about desire, but there's also a string of thought about how we can be replaced, particularly in the workplace. I'm looking forward to reading this because I am interested in thoughts about work and working at the moment. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. We've also got Josh Cohen's Losers. And aren't these designs like so lovely, these two together? This is an essay about losing and being a loser. It's about politics, it's about humility and loss. Josh Cohen is telling us we need to embrace our inner loser, and I am ready. And then finally, Weird Fucks by Lynn Tillman, which I believe is a republication of a text that has not been out and about in print for a while, but is considered brilliant and amazing. This is a novella of increasingly bizarre sexual encounters, so what's not to love? And yeah, that's it from me for this month. I hope you have enjoyed this. It was rather an eclectic mixture this month. I'm hoping to get into some more rhythmic reading next month. That's it from me this month. I hope you enjoyed some of that, and if you have picked up any of the books that I have recommended across the last few videos or in this one, please do let me know, and also let me know what you've been reading, because I love to know. Take care, and hopefully we'll speak soon.